go. Good afternoon, behavior ecology class. This session I'm going to give you a briefing on practical number 5 for this class. Now, practical number 5 is what I have entitled Interpretation of Behavior Ecology Data. Now, this is very important, I think, for us as ecologists and biologists in general, that we have skills to be able to interpret data. If we had time, I would have also given you maybe even raw data to actually plot the graphs yourself.
Linda.
But I'm happy because I know that for this third and the fourth practicals, you will have been given enough opportunity for you to learn how to plot the graphs yourselves. And therefore, that part I think is covered in those two practicals. However, once you have plotted your graphs, it's very important for us to learn how to draw out the trends from the data we collect or the plot that we have made, but also to then interpret the data. And I think this is the basis for this practical. So the aim of this practical is to give you an opportunity to be able to practice and learn how to write trends that you can observe from a chart and even from a table, given different behavior ecology data sets. But I think more importantly, to be able to interpret the meaning of these trends that have been displayed. So this is the aim of this practical. I want us to together to go through some exercise 1 or 2, and then we will be able to see and eventually learn these skills so that we can acquire them and be able to use them. And I think also, more importantly, I would like us to note that in these examples, we will be reinforcing what we have learned in class or what we learned in class so that we can see the relevance of some of what we discuss in class to a real practical way, especially to a way of an ecologist that is involved in behavior ecology. So this is the aim of this practical. Now, here is what we're going to do. This afternoon, I'm going to give you some data sets that have been plotted, and together we're going to review these data sets. We're going to discuss the data sets together with me, and each chart or graph that is presented, we'll discuss the trends that are observed, and then we can interpret the meaning of these trends on the basis of our knowledge and understanding of behavior ecology. Then I'm going to give you 2 examples which you must discuss on your own with your group members. So with your group members, you will be able then to discuss at your own time, maybe next week or whenever you have time. Once you have done that, when we come back from the recess, we will have, I think on that Monday when we're back, we're going to go through the exercise that you have been doing on your own, together as a group, as a class. And then I'm going to upload on Moodle 2 separate exercises or 2 separate data sets or graphs that I'm going to ask you then to write on your own, and that you are going to write straight on Moodle. It will not be a test, but it will actually be a practical that you'll be writing on Moodle on the basis of what you have learned. And so this particular one is going to be an individual exercise because you are going to submit this individually on Moodle. So that is the process that we're going to take for this practical. So number 1, we are discussing together this afternoon. And then secondly, you have an exercise to work with group members. And then when you come back, we discuss what you have done. Then I give you an exercise that you're going to do on your own. And I think that will have given everybody enough chance to understand the process, but also to acquire the skill. And so I will need to test that with an assignment that you are going to write your own later on Moodle. So that is a process so that everyone knows what we're doing and where we're going. So let's do the exercise for this afternoon. So I'm going to start by looking at a data set that I want us to look very carefully. Now, one of the things that I would like us to see from the outset is that we would normally have a chart like this one. Now on that chart, ideally, there will be a title at the bottom. It will be numbered. It will have variables, and then it will have labels on the y-axis. It will have labels on the x-axis. And then, of course, it will be a chart that is either a line graph or a bar graph or whatever. Now, one of the things that I would like us to notice that once you have plotted your data in this form in a chart, the next thing that you need to do after you have done all the labeling and so on, the next thing that you have to do as an ecologist is now to derive trends from the data set that is given. And I think that's the first thing that I want us to do. So you can see here that you will already have had the background to the study, you have background information, but at the same time, I want to say that when you plot your charts, they should be self-contained enough to provide enough information. Now for this exercise, I want us to start with discussing what we mean by trend. So in here, you can see, I'm just going to give a brief background. This is an example of a chart of a forager, for example, a bird that has gone to a particular patch looking for food. When it arrives there, so it has arrived here, this is the time that is going to spend in the patch. And you can actually see that as time is being spent, there is something going on with the food intake. So on the y-axis is the energy gain or food intake. So with time, you can see that there's an increase in food intake with time, but eventually the food intake doesn't continuously increase, but it levels off. So that is a trend that is observed in this particular chart, where we're looking at the time that the bird is spending in a patch against the amount of energy or food that it takes. So we will be wanting to learn how to actually be able to draw out a trend out of the data that we set. So let's look at a real proper example. Now, when you are going to be given a data set like this, what will be important is that for us to understand the background of what's going on in this particular set of data that is given. Now, I want to array the fears that most of the students have. Most students, as soon as they see a graph, they just crumble. They just say, it's difficult. That's it. But I want us to learn to be calm and to just pick up ourselves before we even do anything on the data set that we have. So the first thing that I want us to do every time we have data set that is charted like this, that we be able to calmly look at what is presented. So let's do that for this particular one. I'm going to read, and then I want us to I'll take you through what we want to think about. So here in this data set, we have the African cichlid fish. I think all of us know what a fish is, even if you didn't know what a cichlid fish is, but I think all of us know what a fish is. So we're talking about fish that is in the water, obviously. So the African cichlid fish builds elaborate display sites that resemble small volcanoes or sand castles on the floor of the lake. Now, females visit these castles or bowers only to receive sperm from males for fertilization of the eggs which they brood in their mouth. The males contribute no parental care. So even before we go to the data set itself, we need to collect ourselves and say, what is going on here? So the first thing we need to know, to remember, is we're talking about fish. Thank you, number one. Number two, we're talking about, in these fish, the males build some volcanoes or sand castles. So you can see here, that's kind of a mound that is built by a male on the floor of the lake. Now, the females will be coming to these castles where they are going to meet the males, where they are actually going to collect sperms from the males for fertilization, which then, once fertilization has taken place, the females then take these fertilized eggs into their mouth, and then, of course, the male disappear. So already before you even start looking at the data itself, you know that we're dealing here with breeding, we're dealing here with fish, we're dealing with males and females. The males are building the castles, the females are coming to the castle, and when they come to the castle, fertilization or exchange of sperm takes place, and then after that, the female takes the eggs into their mouth. The male goes away. So now I think we have background information. Now let's look at the table, the figure itself. So the next thing we need to do is to look at what is on the y-axis and what is on the x-axis. Now we will see that here on the x-axis, there's short and tall. bower size. So we know that a bower is a castle. It means that this bar represents the short castle. This one represents the tall castle. It means that the males make short castles. Some males make high castles or tall castles. So we know, we are not stressed. We know there's a short and a long castle. Then on the y-axis, it says here, mean number of females entering the bower. So in other words, these are the responses of the females to the size of the male bower or the male sand castles. So you can see here that already we can see that in there's something happening to the males, the short bowers and the long bowers, because the mean number of females entering the bowers are different. They are different for the short castles and the long castle. Then we look at the figure title itself. It says the mean number of females entering bowers of different sizes. We know some are short, some are tall. And these are built by cichlid male fishes in the lake. So now we can go to the question, because I think we have a background. We know the stories about breeding. The males are producing or making castles. Some males make small castles, some males make big castles, or short or tall castles, and the females make choices. Now here the question says, what do the results in figure 1 show? Now when we are asking, what do the results show? I'm not asking you to tell me that there is short and tall and so on. I'm actually asking, what is the trend that is observed in this graph or this chart that is given? So that is our first task that we need to do. So obviously, what we need to do then is to say, do I have someone who can say something about what is observed here? What trend do you think we can say here?
So can I say something?
Yes, please.
What I'm seeing here, or what I can conclude is
No,
most of the females.
Yes.
Most of the females prefer tall bowers compared to the short one. So a short bower will receive few females, while a tall one will receive more.
Thank you. Now, it is very important when we write the trends that we do not interpret the results. We describe the trend. So in here, all we are going to say is that the females preferred, or the taller bowels were more selected by the females than the shorter ones. Or we can say that more females entered the tall bowels compared to the short ones. We are not interpreting the meaning of that, but all we are saying is that there were more females in the taller bowels than the short ones. So that is describing the trend of the study. And then the next question says, on the basis of figure 1, now on the basis of what we have just discussed, suggest the adaptive value of the behavior of male cichlid fish. What is the adaptive value of the behavior of male cichlid fish? Now, in this question, there are a couple of things we need to think about before we even start writing or thinking anything. Number one, we must ask ourselves, what is meant by adaptive value of behavior? Now, if we have been in this class, we will remember that anything to do with adaptive value of behavior has to do with question number 4 of Tinbergen. What is the function of behavior? So when we are going to answer this question, it is going to be not about causation. It is not going to be about development. It is going to be about the adaptive value of this behavior. Now, it is the adaptive value not just of all the fish, but of male cichlid fish. So again, that is very, very important. So building tall castles versus short ones means that the males that build long or tall castles will be visited most by females. And I think now this is where our knowledge of biology or science becomes important, because we have read from the background that this context here is about reproduction. And if it is about reproduction, then we know that the males building tall castles and the females preferring them means that for the males, there's a higher chance that these females will also collect the sperm or fertilize the eggs of this female. So we know, therefore, that this particular behavior of males erecting or making tall bowel size has something to do with attracting the females, and once the females are attracted, reproduction takes place. So in this particular case, the adaptive value relates to reproduction and benefiting the males that produce larger or taller bowels. So the adaptive value is that males that produce taller bowels are going to attract more females, and once the females have been attracted to the bower where the males are, they will then have a higher chance of fertilization and therefore a higher chance of reproduction. We will remember that the adaptive value or function deals with either survival or reproduction or both. So we will then, when we do that, we'll have answered the question or the issue of the trend itself. We didn't interpret, we just drew out the trend. And then lastly, we answered the question according to what we have been asked. So it is very important that we be very observant, we be very critical, and very carefully look at what we are discussing. I'm hoping that what I've described so far is okay. Is it okay if I can go to the second and last example?
Yes, sir.
So before I leave this example, number one, I'm going to go through it again. Number one, first and foremost, please calm down, calm down. Don't be stressed before you even read what's there, calm down. Number two, read the background information, understand what's going on. If you have understood what's going on, then you come to look at the data itself, what is on the Y, what on the X, look very closely, and then look at the figure title itself. Then by the time you got the questions, it's very easy for you to understand. Let's take our second one. I'm going to read again. In some species, males offer gifts to females, such as food item in return for copulation. For example, females of the black-tipped hanging fly choose among males that offer a nuptial gift in return for mating. Figure 2 below shows the length of time females allowed males to copulate depending on the gifts that were provided to the female. So again, what we do is we look at the context. Here, we are talking about hanging flies, so that's number one. We have males that are bringing gifts to the females. So they're bringing food to the females. And the context is for at the time that they're copulation. So again, this has to do with breeding. And the females receive these males who are bringing their gifts. But once the male brings this gift, the female allows the male to copulate depending on the gifts that they provide. So there is something to do here about the females receiving the gifts from the male and about copulation that is going to take place. So after that, then we go to so we have an idea. We go to our figure or the chart itself. We look at the x-axis. It says body size of nuptial prey. So we know this nuptial prey is referring to the food item that has been brought by the male to the female. So this is about body size of the prey. On the y-axis, we have the duration of copulation. Now, I think all of us who are mature, we know what copulation means, even as biologists. Now, it means this is the time that the male is going to be with the female at the time when copulation is going to take place. Again, that's easy. And then it shows on the figure title itself the duration of copulation in minutes and the size of the gift. So there's a relationship here between the size of the gift and the duration of copulation. So let's go back and inspect the graph itself, okay? We can see here, for example, that who can tell me what is going on between size 0 and size 20? Or maybe just give me the trend. Who can give me the trend? What is observed?
Okay.
Yes.
Is,
Any volunteer?
beasts that brought a smaller size of animals had shorter time to copulate.
Okay.
Your network is dead.
Good start. Can someone make it a little bit more firm? Someone can make it a little bit more clearer?
Is it the first question?
No. We are not doing questions yet. Oh yeah, we're doing the first question. What trends are observed here? Is this better?
The duration for copulation increases with the size, body size brought forth.
All right, very good. That's a very good answer, but it's not completely correct. Can someone add something else? Very good.
I think when it reached 25, it goes steady.
That's a very good observation. Because so we have to be very observant as scientists. So I think the two answers make our trend complete. So we can actually see that on this particular graph, there is an increase in duration of copulation with increase in body size. So as the body size increases, you can see there's an increase in duration of copulation. But when we reach a certain size, maybe about 25 here, you can actually see that an additional larger size of the body of the prey doesn't give us an increasing amount of copulation. So there's a kind of a leveling off at some point about 25 thereabouts. So now we have our trend that has been given. Then so that is done. So we got this last part which it says, what is the function of presenting the nuptial gift for male and female hanging fly? Now, again, we have said that the issue of function is Tinbergen's question number 4. So in other words, we are still looking for what is the adaptive value of presenting the nuptial gift for male and female hanging fly. Now, obviously, we can do it combined, but we can also separate. So for the male, bringing the gift to the female allows him access to the female for copulation. So fertilization is going to take place because I have brought a food to the female. The female accepts the gift. While she is eating, I am doing my job and copulating and drowning the sperms into the female. So that is a very important reproductive function for the male, because the male is bringing to the female. Who can say something about the function for the female? What is the adaptive value for receiving the gift to the female? What do you think? Anyone? What is the adaptive value or function of receiving the gift from the male for the female? Anyone? Okay, in case so that we don't run out of time. So number one, we know that the female is going to get food. I told you it's very easy stuff. If you just think, it's very easy. Remember what we have learned, the basics, then you use your mind to apply it. Number one, we have said the female receives what? A gift of what? Of food. Now, if she receives a gift of food, it means that she will have food. She didn't have to work and look for food. So obviously, that food item brought to her, the nuptial gift, is important for her survival. So that's number one. Number two, because the male has brought the food, it is also to the advantage of the female that this male is also going to copulate with the female, which is a reproductive advantage. So you can see that for the female, there's a benefit both for survival as well as reproduction. In fact, later on, when we're going to look at sex and sexual selection, we will even be able to go further, because you can see here that the larger the body size of the prey, the longer the duration. In fact, we are going to see that the females, therefore, will actually choose males that bring a larger food item. Now, by bringing a larger food item to the female, that is a sign that this male is strong because he can collect larger food items. Therefore, the males which bring larger food items will actually be preferred much, much more than a male that brings a very small item. So you can see here that there is some adaptive value to the female in terms of survival as well as reproduction. So I think that with these two examples, you should now be able on your own to take on a data set and be able to work with them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you two data sets, which I'm going to upload together with this presentation. And I'm also going to put it on Moodle and the portal so that in your groups, you can exercise and work on it. You can also look at other exercises so that you acquire this skill ready for our individual assignments later. So here is a group exercise practicing that I'm going to give with you. So there are two of them. So the first one is going to do with foraging. I just wanted you to know that it's not just about reproduction. I'm giving one here for foraging. So in this example, what I'm wanting you to do is to read this context as a group, look at the data set that is presented, look at the Y and the X, look at the figure itself and the title. Once you have an understanding of this context, then I want you to answer these two questions. So that is the first exercise that you are going to do in your class, rather in your group. The second exercise is the following again. Please don't be stressed. Don't look at this first, just read the text. So I want you to read this text very carefully. Try to imagine and visualize what's going on. Once you are done, then you come to the figure itself. You can see here, it's talking about the number of pigeons in a flock. Now, I think all of us know what a flock is. So it means that these are different flock sizes. And then here on the Y-axis, percentage attack success. Now, if you say that you have an attack and you are successful, I think you know what we mean. So once you have understood this, and once you have understood what's going in here, and you go through the title, then you are ready to answer this question. Now, in here, we're going to answer the question, describe the trend. What are the approximate causes of the behavior? I think by now we know what that means. What is the survival value of living in groups? I think that we know what it means. Even here, what do the results show? In this case, the trends suggest the function or adaptive value that is shown here. So I'm hoping that that is sufficient explanation for you to be able to understand the context of data that is given, to be able to understand the labels on the X and the Y, to be able to have an understanding of what's going on. Only after that, then you're able to take the questions one at a time. And so I would really want us to practice this one, because in the final year, especially for my final exams, this is the kind of exam that you're going to have. Because I think that in final year, we need to assist you to be able to reason and to think and not just to cut and paste. All right. So I think this is the end of the recording for this particular briefing of the practical, and I'm hoping that you have understood very well. We have 5 minutes left. I'm going to stop recording now, but we're going to use these remaining 5 minutes of this Zoom session for you to be able to ask any questions that you may have before we call it a day. Otherwise, I'm going to stop recording now.